I'm really excited about these free prep hours. They give us a chance to kind of go off book from what we normally do in our classes and give you guys some insider information that we don't always have time to when we're trying to cover a whole bunch of curriculum. And today is actually a topic that's really close to my heart. It's a topic of how to review. So we're going to look at quant and verbal, but we're going to talk about how to make the most of your questions when you review them. So a lot of your prep, like your practice and prep, is going to be coming from official questions or practice questions in general, right? Of course, you'll be reading, you'll be looking at content. Hi, Maria, welcome. You might be using our Interact product. You might be using our books. So you'll be doing a lot of work that is content driven, but there's also going to be a lot of opportunity and should be a lot of opportunity for you guys to practice real, right, GRE style questions. And so you want to interface with those things before you see them on test day. Now, I'd rather you not do thousands and thousands and thousands of these, right? What I'd rather you do is do a much smaller number, but get the most out of them. And what I've found is that there are a lot of ways that people think about doing questions and reviewing them. And so we're going to do some stuff that you would find in our 5-pound book. But also similar to what you would find in the official guide problems that you can buy, directly from GRE. And so what I'd like to show you is a way that I feel like my students and a lot of us here at Manhattan Prep have been able to hack to get the very most out of your studies without having to add a whole bunch of extra time to the time that you're doing and reviewing questions. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys for a favor. I want you in the chat window where set your chat window to all panelists and attendees. So I want this to be public. I want you to tell me and one another, when you see a problem, right, you do a practice problem and you finish it. So I finished my practice problem. What's the first thing that you do? Right, so what's the very first thing that you do when you finish a practice problem? Nice. Yep, we're checking the answer. Cool. Awesome. Okay, and then once you check the answer, then what? What next? Okay, so step one, right, we're going to check the answer. And it's like, okay, see if I did it right. Now that's different than see if I got it right. So Maria, what do you mean? Because I know if we check the answer, we're going to see if, I got it right or wrong. What do you mean, see if I did it correctly? Is that the same thing? Did I catch that right? Is that? Yeah, okay. So we're going to see if I got it right or wrong. All right, and then we'll try to figure out where I went wrong if I did. So if you get it wrong, what do? I've got one person saying, look at the solution. Try to see where I went wrong. Anything else that you guys do if you get it wrong? All right, then do me a favor. I want you guys to raise your hand. So one of the options is a hand raise under the little panelist window. What I'd like for you guys to do is show of hands. How do you find yourself reading explanations and thinking to yourself oh, okay, I get it now. I didn't see that, but I get it now. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, lots of hands raised. Oh, I get it. What if though you got it right? What do you do? Oh, Ariana, sometimes it feels a bit over your head. Fair enough. What do we do when we get it right? Move on, right? The most common one is to move on to the next problem or even problem type, right? Maybe we think, okay, I know this content, I'll move to the next one. I like that, Anna. Maybe you do look for, alternative solutions. That would mean maybe you still go to the explanation. All right, we've read the explanation, right? What do you do now? Is there anything you do before moving to the next question? Anything else that you think, oh yeah, I'll do that? Okay, so get in a little bit more. Kind of dig in a little bit more about it, okay? And Amy, what's kit? Just make sure I understand what that means. Oh, yeah. Oh, so maybe you would log, right? Like maybe you error log, right? This seems pretty standard, right? This seems pretty standard. I answer the question. I quickly go and check the answer. I see if I got it right or wrong. If I got it right, I might just move on. I might, if I maybe struggled a little bit with it, consider reading the explanation and look for an alternative. If I got it wrong, I'm going to read the explanation. I might see where I got wrong. I'm probably going to have a moment of like, oh, that makes sense. I get it now. And then I might write an error log, message about it, or otherwise just go trucking on. Scale of 1 to 10, where do you think, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, where do you think I'm going to put this type of review on a scale of 1 to 10? Ooh. I like the numbers keep going. 9, 8, 7. Here's what I love, guys. You guys are being extremely generous. I'm going to give this method like a 3 or a 4 at best. At best. It's better than not reviewing it at all. All right. It's better than just doing it, not even checking to see if you got it right or wrong. You're at least reading the explanation. So that's better than 0. But what I'll tell you right now is I watch student after student after student use this method of doing and reviewing questions and learning very little from what they do. And in fact, I will often give students the exact same question back to them a week later. And if they got it wrong the first time, they're getting it wrong again for the same reason. And so what that tells me is that when we consume explanations, right, when we become the consumer of an explanation, we don't really learn much. So I think about an explanation. Here's my analogy for you. I've got a couple for this one. Is someone playing piano, right? Like someone performing on the piano. And let's say you're trying to learn how to play piano. If all you ever do is go and watch other people play the piano, are you going to learn how to play the piano? No. Like, no, you're not going to learn how to play the piano. Yes, it's important to watch people or listen to other people play the piano. That's critical. But at the end of the day, like you have to practice over and over and sort of drill some of these new lessons. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to tweak this, how to do and review, so that you can get the very most out of each question that you try. All right, so let's start. The first step to all of these is going to be, how do you do the question in the first place? How are we going to do questions? Well, if you're doing official questions, then you should always be doing them timed. Step 1, you should always be doing them timed. Now, for an individual question, what you're going to do is give yourself 50% overtime, or like extra time. So if a problem like QC, for example, quantitative comparison, our target time is to be about an average of, let's call it a minute 15. Minute 15. So if my goal is an average of a minute 15, then I'm going to give myself more like a minute 45. I'll give myself an extra 30 seconds to solve it. So I'm going to start a timer. I'm going to let it count down if I want to handle it this way. So that's one way I can time myself. The other way to time yourself is to start a timer counting up and then make a note of how long it actually took you to solve. That's the second way to do it. But either way, you should be working with individual questions or even sets of questions timed initially. So your first pass should be timed. All right, so this is first step, timed. Our second step, I will not have checked the answers yet. I will not have looked. I do not know if I got it right or wrong. I have no idea. I'm going to try it untimed. Oh, and I should have mentioned, if it's a set of questions, you give yourself exactly the allotted time. You're not going to give yourself overage because you are trying, if you're doing a set of questions, to learn how to balance. So let's say you do 4 quantitative questions total for an average of about 1:45 each. And then if you're doing 5 of those, you want to spend the 8.5 minutes, and that's all you get to do all of those questions. But then what you'll do is you'll go back and you'll do any and or all questions untimed. So if something felt, rocky, a little uncertain, especially if you're working on the kind, not where you let the clock count up and take as much time as you want, but where you are setting the timer, and when the timer runs out, you're done. If at any point you do not get an answer, right, you don't finish, run out of time, skip because you don't know or don't think you know, so maybe quickly enough for you, right? You don't feel comfortable sticking with that problem, so you're going to bail. For any of those, you're definitely going to go back and do them untimed. So 2 things about this. 1, if you're not working with time, you're not actually prepping for the test. And so you should absolutely be experiencing what it feels like with a clock running while you're trying to do a problem. Okay, so we need to do things timed. Now, that said, if all you're ever doing is stuff timed and you keep getting timed out, you aren't always getting to see a problem through all the way to the end. And without seeing a problem through all the way to the end, we can't get faster at our work if we don't ever get to finish. And sometimes when we finish, we can start to take a look back and go, okay, well, this problem took me a little bit longer, but I actually think that was worth it because I knew what I was doing. Or this question took me a little longer, and honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. I really would like to see next time that this is one I want to let go. All right, so this is why we want both halves. We want to try problems timed, but then we also want to try them untimed. And this is for quant and for verbal. So 1, so that we can get the sensation of how fast time moves. 1, so that we can actually complete the journey. Can I get all the way to an answer for this question? Okay, so once this is done, right, we've done our problem. It's time to check our answers. And this is where we're going to look at the answer letters. So step 1, we're going to see if we got it right. I mean, that's it, right? So step 1, see if you get the problem right or wrong. And you're going to note the correct answer. So we're going to try some problems so we can practice these next few steps, okay? Because these next few steps can sound a little confusing. So step 1, see if you got the problem right or wrong. Now, there are a handful of questions where I don't want you to go to the explanation if you got it wrong. Now, let's, though, address all problems if you got it right. So that's kind of the easy place. Let's say you got it right. We are never going to move to the next question. Not just right away. And several of you guys mentioned this, right? I want to look at some of the logic behind other answer choices. I want to confirm that when I answered the question, I answered it correctly and didn't just get lucky. Very common in verbal that we get lucky. Right? I want to see if there was an alternative method that might have been more intuitive to me, faster, more efficient, more effective, lazier, right? And so if I get it right, particularly for things like quant, what I'm looking for is an easier or a more intuitive method. Doesn't always mean faster, right? But it could mean Any of those things could be true. Can I find one of those by reviewing the ones I got right? And then particularly, and we're going to see this one for quantitative comparison. So QC, quantitative comparison, we're going to try this first. Did I get lucky? Because quantitative comparison is about logic. Yes, it's about content, but it's even more about sort of the logical rationale. And so you can get those right by accident. You've done all the math wrong, but you still came at the right answer. And so we need to make sure, if you're doing QC, did you just get lucky or did you actually know what you were doing? Now that's going to be a big one for verbal. For verbal, we just want to make sure, did I get lucky? So for all verbal. But then the second piece of it is for any of the reading, so less than the vocab, but any of the reading. What we want to look for is exactly what Anna mentioned. Is, again, did I get lucky, but did I eliminate the wrong answers for the wrong reasons? Or for the right reasons, I guess. Or did I just sort of, I said that it was wrong for this reason, but it wasn't actually wrong for that reason. I mean, like, I sort of misinterpreted it. So what I'm trying to do is, was my logic on point? All right, how solid was my logic? And then for any of the vocab-based, I want to see what words I need to learn. So maybe I knew the word that was supposed to go in the blank. I got it. I knew what it was supposed to mean. And I saw that there was an answer choice that matched it, which was good because there were 3 answer choices that I didn't know what they meant. Right? If that's the case, then I need to go and review and see, well, which of these are words that I actually just don't know at all. And so I would like to add those to my flashcard list because I only got lucky on this one because the right answer was like a word I knew. If the correct answer had been one of those other words, I'd have been in trouble. Right, so we have a lot of motivation to check our answers even when we get things right. Because what we want is we want to be sharp on test A. And luck is not sharp. Luck is squishy. All right, luck is fickle. It comes and it goes. And so we would like to come at like reading-based questions with as clear a logic as we possibly can, with QC questions with as clear a solution as possible, with all quant questions with the most efficient or effective ways to solve them as possible. And then vocab based, we'd like to have like the broadest vocabulary we possibly can. So when we get stuff right, there's still room from those to improve. Take them as strengths and make them stronger. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what to do if you get them wrong. Okay, and we're going to look at each one of these separately, but just a couple of upfront kind of notes about what you want to be having in your mind as we go through some of these problems. Okay, so if you get something wrong and you go immediately to the explanation and you start reading, right, and you're just like gorging on the explanation, you have become a connoisseur of explanations. Right? And if you, like almost everybody in here that raised their hand, find yourself saying things a lot like, oh, that's okay, oh. What you just figured out is that the person who wrote that explanation knows how to solve the problem and does a pretty good job of writing explanations because they were able to write the explanation in a way that was intuitive to you. If you read it and you're like, man, I'm still confused, it might be that you just figured out that the person who wrote that explanation just isn't good at writing them in a language that makes sense to you. Right? That doesn't teach you how to do a problem. That doesn't teach you how to get it right next time. Show of hands again. How many of you guys have ever taken a class where you're supposed to do something with your hands? Like a cooking class, a pottery class, a painting class? Perfect. Okay, so now imagine that you show up at this class and you think you're gonna like, you know, paint a painting or make a pot or, you know, like do your little glass or whatever it is that you think you're gonna do. You're gonna cook some food. You show up at this class only to find out that you're sitting in a seat watching a teacher cook or make pottery or paint. Type it in the chat window. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about this class that you showed up for? You were going to learn how to, you know, throw some pottery. You were going to make a thing for a Christmas gift. And you realize that like, oh, I'm supposed to sit here and watch the instructor. That's all I'm going to do. It's just like, sit. Yeah, Michelle, like bored. In fact, I'm probably going to be annoyed. Right? And so, you know, I'm not learning anything. I'm totally disappointed, right? I'm learning nothing. Now let's imagine that, okay, eventually you are going to get to, you know, throw some pottery, or you are going to get to paint, or you are going to get to cook whatever, you know, that scrambled egg dish. So imagine that is coming, but now the instructor is making you watch the entire process before they let you touch anything. So they're like, I'm going to show you all the steps. You're going to watch me do it. And then at the very end of that, I'll let you do it. Is that better? Ariana's like, I'm grateful. Yeah, Vincent, I'm with you. I'm still disappointed. I'm annoyed. I'm really annoyed because I don't want to watch somebody do 30 steps and then go like, oh, okay, cool. It's my turn. I see this a lot with my niece and nephew, especially when they were young, when they were like 5 and 7. If we would be doing a craft project, if I tried to do one too many steps with them, they'd be like, just give me the scissors, give them, and Whitney, give it to me, give it. I want to try. Right? And I find myself doing that, right? Like when I'm sitting in one of these classes, or I find myself doing this when tech support comes to do something and they like take my mouse and they move it and they click, and I'm like, just give me I want to do it. Let me do it. Let me try to learn. Let me do it. Right? So I think that there's this nature that we want to do it. I want to get my hands on the pottery or on the paintbrush or in the food, right? Like I want to do it. Let me do it. We are often tactile and experiential learners. Like that's human nature. If all you do when you get a question wrong is read explanations, then you're not putting your hands on the dough or the pottery or the paint. You are watching someone demonstrate and sort of nodding along, which is why when you are then later asked to do it on your own, it's not very efficient. If, however, as the person was teaching step by step, you were being allowed to interact with it and you were stopping the instruction and getting to try and working a little bit and then the next piece of instruction, then working a little bit and the next piece of instruction, right? If that's how you were learning, you'd own the information by the end of it. Right? By the end of it, you'd have a casserole, you'd have a pot, you'd have a beautiful painting for your wall, right? Like you would be excited to take something home. And in fact, if you were to do that same project a week from now, you'd still have some pretty good memories about what it was that you were meant to do. And so this, my friends, is how I want you to engage with explanations. You are not going to sit back and let an explanation from start to end. Well, no, so here it comes. Here's the best part, Ariana. You can use your explanations to do it for you. Yeah? So here's how it's going to work. Instead of sitting down with an explanation, and you start at the top, and you just gorge on it all the way to the bottom, you are going to read the explanation slowly, and you're going to stop frequently, and you're going to check in. So the explanation, once we get to it, the explanation is a hint. Or maybe better said, a series of hints. Right? So once we get to an explanation, you're going to read a sentence and then you're going to stop. And you're going to say, okay, did I think of that? Right? This just told me it was a quadratics problem. I didn't even realize that. Huh. Okay, well now I know it's quadratics. Does that help me? Oh, I didn't know this was a problem about evens and odds. Or maybe it's like, okay, I knew this was exponents. All right, next. So you'll read another sentence, you'll stop. And whatever that says, you'll go, well, did I think that? Did I try that? Did I see that? Did I do that? If the answer is yes, I saw that, yes, I did it, you're gonna read the next piece of information, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. At any moment, you hit a piece of information where you're like, wait, I didn't think that at all. I didn't think to write that equation. I didn't think to draw that table or that picture. That didn't even dawn on me. I didn't think to estimate or to plug in my own numbers. Right? Stop reading the explanation. And now that you have this hint, go back to the problem. Knowing that, is that enough now to give you new direction and allow you to get to the right answer? Note that maybe you do. You go back to the problem and it gets you like a little bit further. You chip away a little bit, but then you get stalled out again. You're like, okay, I'm still stuck. I don't really know what to do now. All right, if that's the case, you go back over to the explanation where you stopped and you pick back up. Did I do that? Okay. Did I do that? Yeah. Oh, wait. Oh, I think I did that wrong. Oh, I added that number wrong. Okay, so let me stop reading the explanation. Let me go back and let me see, now that I know that I've caught this math error or this, conceptual error or this poor assumption, let me now go in and continue to work through it. Right? Yeah, so in terms of like fundamentals, it depends on what you mean by fundamentals, right? And so we'll talk about that once we get into like, well, what do I look for when I'm reviewing? Which is the question of like, why did I get it wrong? Or why did I do it the slow way? Right? That's when we decide like, well, was it the foundational knowledge I didn't know? Was it the way the question was worded that I misunderstood? Was it that I just wasn't familiar with this more like strategic level? Like I know exponents, right? I know the exponent rules, but I didn't know how to apply them in this case. So there's different reasons why we get questions wrong. So that's kind of the third piece. Yeah. So when we get stuff wrong, we know that at some point we're going to hit the explanation. Once we do, we are not going to read it as if it is like the most amazing bedtime story in the world. Page Turner. Oh my gosh. It's Harry Potter, the new book 8, if there was such a thing. Right? So we're not going to sit there and read it like fascinating reading material. We're reading it as someone who is slipping to us a sequence of hints. Now, before that though, for a handful of questions, so let's call this all of verbal. And then more commonly for quant, you're going to do QC on quant. You're going to do what I like to call reverse engineering. What does that mean? Does anybody feel comfortable with reverse engineer and can type it in the chat window? What that would mean to reverse engineer anything. What does it mean to reverse engineer something? I love that, Vincent. Google search. Google search. Backtrack. Nailed it. Ariana, beautiful, right? So when we're thinking about a reverse engineer, and this could be out in the world, when you reverse engineer something, right, it usually means that you see the output, right? So, oh, here's this, recipe, right? I was at, my friend's house and she ordered this like soup and, we were eating this tomato soup and I thought it was delicious, but there was no actual recipe online, right? Like this, we bought it. So I want to try and make this soup. I have to reverse engineer it. I know the outcome, but can I go backwards and start to look for inputs that would help me make that? So I start to mix a few ingredients and I taste it and I'm like, no, I mean, it's close, but I'm pretty sure that this one has some sort of like basil maybe in it. So let me see what happens if I add a little basil. Like, okay, I'm getting closer, but the end result was a lot creamier. So maybe I need some butter, maybe I need some heavy cream, right? So reverse engineering means taking the result and trying to figure out what the heck the inputs were that got you there. In the world of reviewing standardized test questions, it means that if you know the answer letter, can you figure out why that actually is the right answer? This is great for verbal, right? Because you can read all of the answer choices and you know what they all mean. So now you picked answer letter A. The correct answer was C. So knowing that the correct answer is C, can you go back and try to figure out why? Why is the right answer C? How does that even make sense? I'm like, okay, well, I read what this, let me go reread the argument. Let me just toss that around. The same is true for QC because the answer choices represent more of a top-level understanding of the information than of a knowledge of content. For a lot of QC problems, you'll know the content they're testing. You'll just get the wrong answer because you didn't test the right case, or you didn't look at the two quantities in sort of a better way. So if you know the answer letter in these types of problems, that alone might be enough for you to figure out why the right answer is right. Once you've done that, you're now at a spot where you're either going to now treat the question as if you got it right. So you're going to go, you're going to read the explanation, you're going to verify your logic, you're going to look for anything that you may have missed the first time through, look for any kind of misunderstandings, try to figure out, where you made your mistake the first time, if you did. If you still can't figure it out through reverse engineering, now we move to the explanation. No harm, no foul. Great. Right? We were going there anyways. So it doesn't cost you anything, but you're adding this little extra place where you're like, you know what? Don't even bring me an instructor. I think I could paint this painting on my own. Watch me do it. And maybe you do. Or maybe you're like, oh my God, like me, that painting is a mess. Oh my gosh, I cannot paint. I'm going to need to find a painting instructor. Right? And so maybe that's what you figure out. But we're going to add this little interjection. So if you get it right, we go to the explanation to try and make sure that we have verified our own logic. If we get it wrong, for verbal and for quantitative comparisons, we're going to start with a moment of reverse engineering. Okay, the correct answer is C. Can I go figure out why? Then, no matter what happens, we're going to go to the explanation. And at this point, we're either using the explanation as verification, right, to check and confirm our logic, or we're going to use the explanation as a hint so that we can get ourselves unstuck. So far, so good? I'll take some thumbs up, some hand raises, or whatever the options are. I don't really know what they are in the window. We'll take some hand raises if things are good. Cool, because we are going to try some problems. We're going to do it. Are you excited? We're going to practice this, and we're going to see what it looks like on actual problems. And so we'll start with our buddy QC. Okay, so we're going to try a QC problem. I'm going to do exactly what I told you. I'm going to set a timer for you counting down. I'm giving you 1:45, which is just over, about 50% over the amount of time I would normally want you to take, right? And at the end of it, I need you to put an answer privately in the chat window. So you're going to send it just to panelists. All right, so your time is up. By this point, right, your first pass through, you will want to pick an answer. That might just be a wild guess, but for the GRE, you need to put an answer down for everything. There is no penalty for getting it wrong. None at all, right? We're going to put A if quantity A is bigger. We're going to put B if quantity B, like the symbol between these, would be greater than. We're going to put C if the two quantities are equal, and we're going to put D if we cannot tell. If we cannot tell. Okay, so what we then do is check for our correct answer. For our correct answer. And the correct answer for this problem is, in fact, A. Right? Quantity A is bigger. So you'll take a moment, you'll check your notes, right? If you had wanted more time to do it a second time through, you absolutely could, but we'll check our notes. And then it's time to kind of move slowly through the explanation. A lot of you guys got this one exactly right, where it's like, okay, x is an integer greater than 1. So let's make it x equals 1, or rather 2. Right? So x is 2. That would make this 3 squared, 2 to the third. Stop if you were like, oh, if you're reading the explanation, you're like, oh my God, I didn't even think about actually like testing out numbers. I was just trying to guess. Then you would stop and you would start testing out numbers. In this case, we get 9 and 8, which makes quantity A bigger. We try another one. X to the third, right? We get 3 to the third power, which in this case would be 27. We get 2 to the fourth power, which is 16. I'm going to try one more anytime I get the same answer over and over. 3 to the fourth is 81. 2 to the fifth is 32. Is this going to keep going in this way? Can I stop? What's the pattern? What do you guys think? Are we good to stop? Nice, yeah. I think we're good to stop, right? And it's because if you notice in each of these, right, the explanation is going to say like, hey, look, they're getting further and further apart. Right? Further and further apart. All right, so what happens then? Let's swap it up a little bit. And we'll try the following, right? So same idea. Let's see what we can learn from that previous one. We'll try it again. And give this one a try. Yeah, so we're trying to figure out which one of these is larger. So which one of these is larger? Well, we saw when we did the last time, right? We saw that if we tested out numbers, and since we've seen this one again, like, cool, let's test out numbers. If x is 1, we get 3 to the first power versus 4 squared. Well, that one's 16. We get 3 squared. If I test out x is 2, this is 4 to the third. Yeah, we have a bigger number to a higher power. Every single time quantity B is going to be bigger. Right? Quantity B is going to be bigger. All right, so last but not least, so we're all comfortable with the content itself, right? My job for these questions is going to be to try and see whether I can show which one is bigger. Is quantity A bigger, quantity B bigger, or C, they're the same, or D, I can't tell. So let's try one more and see what you notice for this one. But then, right, we go to the answer, right, we flip and we go look, and we see that the answer is D. Now, there were a handful of you guys who said D as the answer. And for you, your job will be to, as someone goes through the explanation, make sure that you did it the way that the explanation did. If you didn't say D, if you pick something else, your first step would be to ask, like, okay, well, wait, D means that I can't tell which of these two quantities is bigger. Right? I don't know which one it is. So if I can't tell which quantity is bigger, then that must mean if I thought it was A, or I thought it was B, or I thought that they were equal, I must be missing a case. I must be missing a scenario. Can I now go back to the problem and try to find it? If you chose D, give us the sort of like hint. What are we missing if we picked A or B? Right. So for the handful of you guys, and send this out to all panelists and attendees. What do you think we missed? What do you think we missed? So for those of you that picked D, can you give us a clue? Can you tell us what to think about? Can you tell us a number to pick? So Jordan is saying there's a pattern. Anybody else see the pattern or just happen to test enough numbers? I've got one in the background that says test a few extra numbers. So if the answer was D, we might go in and go, okay, well, I had already tested. X is 1, so that would be 3 squared is 9, right? And then 4 to the first power is 4. And if X is 2, then that would be, 3 to the third power is 27, and 4 squared is 16. And then if I did X is 3, Then I've got 3 to the 4th power is 81, and our 4 squared is 64. Or 4 cubed, rather, is 64. And it's like, oh, I've already tested 3. I don't want to go any further. Exactly, exactly. So if I'm like, I don't really want to go any further, and maybe I picked A then. Well, here's what happened. I picked A when if I had gone one more, right? 3 to the 5th, don't forget you do have a calculator. 3 to the 5th is 243, while 4 to the 4th is 256. So in the first 3 cases, quantity A was bigger. In the last case, it was quantity B. So we can start to think about our lesson. So here's the final step, right? Okay, I've figured out how to get to the answer. Now, what's my takeaway? So we talk a lot about error logging. And we talk a lot about error logging. But what I want you to think about is, what is a takeaway from this problem that you could take and apply to any of the others? Right? So maybe from the earlier ones, the takeaway was like, test out some numbers. From this problem, the takeaway might be, I have to test enough numbers. And then maybe better than that, I love what Jordan said, which was, hey, notice the sort of relative sizes, right? 9 was twice as big as 4. 27, a little less than twice as big. 81 is not nearly, it's not double 64. It's as if those two numbers are converging. And so there's probably going to come a point where they're going to switch because the 4 to the x is catching up. So maybe this is a place where it's like, let's take a pause and look for a pattern. Let's see if we can't find a pattern. You can do the same thing with pretty much any QC problem, right? Is go back and look for, like, try that reverse engineer first, and then move the explanation one sentence at a time, using it as a series of hints. A series of hints. And then you want to ask, what was it? Why did I miss this problem? So this goes back to, Ariana, your question about, do I know content, all right? Or is it foundational material? If you knew how the exponents worked, then you don't need to go review exponent rules. If what you missed was you weren't comfortable with the QC framework, then maybe you need to practice with the question type. If it was that you're not comfortable testing cases or looking for patterns, then you want to work on the strategies involved. Right? You want to practice those strategies. And so that's going to be the same for all kinds of problems. It might be that you didn't know the rule. Well, that's foundational work. It might be that you weren't comfortable reading the graph in, say, data interpretation. And so that might mean that you need to practice looking at some standard bar charts, pie charts, practice with them some of those questions. Or it might be that you aren't comfortable, like you misread something. So it's not the content that you missed, you just misread. And so maybe you need to practice slowing down when you read. Maybe you need to practice not trying to combine too much information at once. Right? So as you go through your explanation, you're trying to see, well, why did I get it wrong? And what does that mean for how I should study the next question? Okay, we can do the exact same thing with our vocab and our reading. Right? Let's try a sentence completion, a text completion. And so you have 5 answer choices. One of them will correctly fill that blank. We want to be able to finish these questions in about a minute. So I'm going to give you about 1:30 to answer, and I want you to submit an answer to me no matter what. get some answers to me. Okay, so I got lots of different answers, kind of all over the place. And so for vocab-based questions, again, first thing you'll do is you'll check and see what the right answer is. In this case, it's A, garrulous. And now you're going to take a moment and you're going to say, all right, if I picked that word, are there any other vocab words in this list that I'm not familiar with? If so, I'm going to look them up and I'm going to make flashcards for them. It might even be the word I chose, though, because maybe I chose garrulous. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it couldn't be any of the others. You will also identify any words in the sentence itself that you don't know. So maybe you don't know euphemistically, you don't know precocious. You'll jot all these down, and I normally will keep a stack of flashcards with me, and I will write the words on the front of each of those flashcards so that then at the end of my study session, I can go look up their definitions. Okay, so now what you're going to do is, if you didn't pick A, let's take a moment to try and reverse engineer the question. All right, so help me out, guys. Type in the chat window, what does it mean when we say the adult, and if you know these words, what does it mean when we say that the adults euphemistically? What does that mean? So we're going to find out if we actually did a good job of deciding what would go in that blank. Yeah, exactly. This is like polite. All right, so we're going to say that the parents politely referred to her. Oh, okay. So they were being kind to the overly talkative young girl as precocious. What is precocious? What does precocious mean? Yeah, right. So precocious would be someone who was like advanced for their age, mature, right? Talented or clever, intelligent. And so any of these, like mature, intelligent. So we politely called this overly talkative young girl mature or intelligent. Privately, however, we found her to be, so then what would that fill in be? Like, forget the word garrulous. Think of a simple word that would fill in that blank. She's overly talkative, and we're kindly calling her like mature, intelligent. What must they actually think about her? Yeah, so maybe we can think about maybe dumb, but we're trying to think about, instead of politely calling her mature and intelligent, how would we not politely refer to a talkative person? Right? And so we might say something just like overly talkative. Right? Like, so we might even just say annoyingly talkative. So assuming that you'd known what these two words were, would you have come up with the correct fill-in? Right? If the answer is yes, I totally would have come up with the correct fill-in, then those vocab words are what kept you from getting this question right, or at least part of it. If even knowing what those vocab words were wouldn't get you the correct fill-in, so the correct idea of what that word means, then it's not just the vocab. Right? Now you need to think about what it means to look for clues in the sentence, look for connecting language. Right? This means there's more strategy to it than just vocab. And for a lot of folks, strategy in terms of careful reading and analyzing for like finding that fill-in is as big of an issue, if not more, than the vocabulary. And then now we'll check it again with our answer choices. If I know annoyingly talkative, can I eliminate answer choices? Or are there any of those that I would need to learn? And so in this case, skittish would mean like nervous. Solicitous would mean like, trying to encourage others. Endearing is sweet. That's you know, we're not trying to be sweet anymore. We're not trying to be polite. And so naive would mean doesn't know, unintelligent. But the correct answer is garrulous, which actually means like overly talkative. And so if you knew that garrulous meant talkative, and you knew what the words in the sentence meant, and you knew what went into that blank, you would get this question right. So as you review, the next piece, right, would be, can I come up with a fill-in? Can I write down the definitions of any words in the answer choices that I don't know, and then can I get it right? If that's true, if I can just replace all the words I don't know with words I do know and I get it right, then the only issue I had was vocab. If, however, I change out all the words I don't know for words I do know, and I still pick the wrong one, then it's an issue of misunderstanding or misreading. Right? So this is what we want to start to do. So for quant, you're thinking like, well, why did I miss? Did I miss because I didn't know the content, I didn't understand the question type, or I wasn't very good at the strategy? For vocab based, is it that I didn't know the vocabulary, or I didn't have a good handle on the sentence? I was misreading or wasn't able to make connections between the blank and other parts of the sentence. And then as you start to move into more of your like reading passages in general, you can start to ask the question of, well, did I understand what the question was asking? Was there something in the passage that I missed? Right, so I didn't read the passage maybe at all, or I just kind of skimmed so quickly I didn't notice that detail. Was it something in the passage that I didn't understand? Like it was a detail I fully misunderstood. Can I put my finger on why I misunderstood it? Was it just a really confusing passage, or was I moving too quickly? Was it an answer choice that I misunderstood? Right? Was there something in the way the answer choice was written that was confusing? And so at that stage, now you're starting to ask, like, where did the understanding breakdown happen? They're great for reverse engineering, right? Just like these sort of verbal ones, they're great for it, or these vocab ones. They're great, and in some ways even better for reverse engineering. And then it's really critical that you take a moment to understand, why was every answer choice very specifically wrong? Because I want not just the logic of picking the right answer, but I also want the solid logic of eliminating the 4 wrong answers. So before we sort of close for the evening, I want to give you your steps for how to review. All right, so step 1 is to do the problem. All right, step 2 is going to be to review the problem. And then step 3 is take your takeaway, right? Like note your takeaway. And I think takeaways should be what I would call portable. You should be able to pick them up and carry them into the next question. They should also be something, right? So takeaways should be portable. So they're applicable beyond that question. But even more importantly, they should be worth paying for. And so this was a big one for me. If you hired a private tutor and they gave you the piece of advice that you use for your takeaway, which is like, slow down, don't read so fast. Oh, don't make careless mistakes. You should stop making careless mistakes. If that's the takeaway they gave you, would you be happy about what you were paying them to tutor you? If you would not be happy with what they were paying you or what you were paying them, then you need to come up with a better takeaway. Instead of like, oh, stop making careless mistakes. Oh, read more carefully. No, be more specific. In order to not make that careless mistake, did you need to write down things on your paper? Did you need to try and build a table? Did you need to stop and reread the section when you knew you weren't clear about it? So what is the takeaway that's the most value add for you? So in step 1, while you're doing the problem, you're always going to do it timed, first pass. You can either do it individually by adding, about 50% to the time and use a timer counting down. Or you can do it as a timed set with exact time allotted. Then your second pass is going to be untimed. You're going to use this for any problems of struggle, ran out of time, weren't sure how to answer, right away, so bailed. Right, so anything like that, you're going to do untimed on that second pass. Next, you're going to review the problem, right? So you're going to check the answer letter. And you're going to determine right or wrong. If you got it wrong, well, we'll start with right. If you got it right, you're going to review the explanation to confirm your logic. That's for all questions. You're going to make sure that the logic or the steps or your understanding worked. And then you are also then going to look for alternative solution paths that might be faster, more intuitive, less sort of energy intensive, or just like feel easier. If you got it wrong, if it is verbal or QC, you're going to start with a reverse engineer or try to. So can I reverse engineer it? Maybe. That would be awesome. If not, or for all other quant questions, use the explanation as a hint, or in other words, series of hints. And at every step, you're trying to like grab control back from the explanation. No, let me do it. I want to do it. Let me do it. I want to do it. No, I want to do it. Come on, let me do it. Please let me do it. And that's it. You know your takeaway. Off you're gonna go. And your takeaway will help you identify, right? Why did you get it wrong? Right, that's the big piece. And so when we're thinking, why did I miss this problem? It's things like, I didn't know the content. I didn't know a strategy. It was, you know, I need a better method for reading under timed situations. Right? Like, what am I going to do? What part did I misunderstand? Maybe it's vocab, right? So we'll put that like under content as well, but it might be some sort of vocab word that caught me. But your job is to figure that out. Why did I miss it? Because I don't want to make that mistake next. And then if you really want to be the pro at this, you'll set a note for anything you got wrong to redo it in about 4 or 5 days. So that you haven't gotten so far away from it that you've forgotten all of this, but it gives you another touch on the ball, gives you another chance to see that problem before it's gone too long, and you can reconfirm what you learned this time through. Cool. What do you mean? No, I don't necessarily. Honestly, I don't have a huge recommendation about like always stick with one program. I would say don't go bouncing and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing among a million different programs. Do stick with some information enough to be able to pull from it, right? Like if you're constantly like writing and rewriting this the ship, it's just too much, right? It's just like too much coming in all the time. And so it can be nice to just start simple, keep it nice and limited. And the nice thing about one program, be it our interactive, one of our classes, or you know any of the products out there, or books or whatever, the one thing that's really nice is that they've been built to kind of carry you from point A to point Z. And so if you follow one company's product, we're all trying to get you a nice broad understanding of everything. And if you're constantly moving, then you might be missing out on some of those pieces at various ones. And to that end, come check us out. You can complete any first session. You can come take a session 1 of any of our in-person or online complete courses for free. You can get a trial of our GRE Interact product, right, and try that for free. So we would love to see you. If we can be of any help at all, reach out. Let us know. Good luck with your GRE studies. I hope for those of you here in the States or around the globe that are getting some time off over the next couple of weeks, happy holidays, should you celebrate them. A happy new year, right? Hopefully we're ready to hit the GRE come January 1, right? And thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you. We love having you as part of even just our prep course or our free prep hour kind of family. So thanks for joining us. Again, I'm Whitney. Have a very lovely rest of your evening or morning, wherever it is that you are, and a great holiday season. Bye, guys.